Well, hello world. Jeff DeVerter, Chief Technology Evangelist with Rackspace Technology here with another Solve Live. So excited about today's conversation. As I mentioned last week about this time, that this next month or so on our Thursday time, although it's a little later in the day than normal, would be with my partner in crime for so many years, Kent Kingery. We'll get to that in just a second. Hey, if you're watching, let's get some questions together. Let's get some engagement. Feel free to post in the thing down below in the comments that you're here, where you're here from, and how's your day going? Today, our topic is going to deal, well, oddly enough, with cloud, but not as you might imagine it. You see, there was an article posted recently in CIO Drive. Great publication. And the name of this article was Why Businesses Are Repatriating Their Cloud Workloads into Their Own Data Center. I added the last part, but that's what they're doing. They're bringing it back. They say the cloud's not for us. Now, in this article, they surveyed 350 different IT professionals. The company that did this was a research commissioned by Vertana. There's the article. Thanks, producer Daniel. Always glad to have him helping out today. Hey, who's watching? Don't forget to post. It's a little quiet down there. Hey, there we go. Michael's here. But to talk about this today, I've asked Kent Kingery, partner technology strategist, all-around nice guy, to come and join me today. He works with Microsoft and has been involved in clouds since before it was called cloud. So Kent, come on up on stage here and let's get into our topic of the day, because there is so much to talk about.
Yeah, there is. I'm still digging that dance music you had at the beginning.
Oh, yeah. It's kind of hard to stop moving, right?
It's a pleasure to be here.
Hey, looks like Harsh is here today, and he asked this question. He says, which is better, cloud? You're going to love this. Cloud versus DevOps.
Cloud versus DevOps. I'm not even sure that.
I feel like we're conflating a couple of words that don't necessarily go together.
I agree.
I feel like what's better? Do we? Well, I don't want to be derogatory, but it's an interesting question because DevOps are very much a part of a cloud. What, Kent? A cloud
operating model. You got it. You got it. And in fact, I'll give you the short answer, Harsh. I would never make the move to a cloud operating model without DevOps firmly in place. Period.
Oh, 100%. 100%. Because, and that really, it's like we paid him to kind of come in and tee this up, because the cloud isn't a location, right? It's not a location.
No.
What is it?
No.
It's an operating model. It's
an operating model. It's a way we think about it. It's a way that we design our application workloads to run. And that can be done more or less the same in an on-premises environment, in a private cloud environment, in a public cloud environment. Heck, we're even getting to the point where we're starting to see cloud operating capability on even devices. So,
and it's amazing what can happen there. So when we say a cloud operating model, it's part of every decision. So let's pick that apart a second, because I think it's important, because it's going to make the conversation, once we talk about repatriation, I think so much richer. Hey, Philip, glad you're here. Thanks for the encouragement on the kickoff. So Kent, what's a cloud operating model?
So, and I think you said it earlier, and let's just expand on it. An operating model of any kind is a collection of processes, approaches, the way we think about it. Maybe they're designs, maybe they are even technologies that we've adopted. So maybe we're adopting containerization, maybe we're adopting serverless, maybe we're adopting on-demand VM compute resources, et cetera. All of those are available in the public cloud, but that's not the only place they're available.
That's right. So the article talks about how, and it's a big number, right? Of these 350 IT professionals from different organizations were surveyed, that 72%, nearly 3/4 of them, are repatriating. In other words, moving from the cloud back into their data center, in whole or in part, maybe specific workloads or not. And reasons for that. Yep. Cost savings is one of them.
Sure.
The cost savings that they were supposed to get from the provider, and we're going to pause after this and pick this one apart, weren't realized. Cost savings from the provider weren't realized.
Hmm.
Can
So
a
is that like
provider give cost savings?
so is that like me buying a car that is purported to get 35 miles to the gallon on the highway as long
Right.
as I drive within certain parameters, driving outside those parameters using substandard gasoline, et cetera, and then getting 24 miles to the gallon and blaming the car manufacturer? I mean, that's what it feels like to me. So
Yeah,
I think the opportunity is there to save costs in some areas. And
sure.
then I think you get into this age old argument that you and I have talked about forever, which is what do we really mean by cost? Right? Are we
Right.
talking about actual implementation and acquisition cost? Are we talking about total cost of ownership? Are we talking about the investment cost necessary to be able to get to cloud capabilities we wouldn't normally get on premise?
Yeah.
There's a lot that goes into that.
There's a lot that goes into that, but let's create our own definition for the conversation and say
Sure.
the cost is I can buy my own servers and run them in my own data center and operate them, or I can go get my servers or compute or IT or tech from a hyperscaler cloud provider. That's what we mean for our definition right now. That's what we mean in cost. And should cost ever, it's a pedantic question, should a cost really be the driver of why you would move to the cloud? If you're going to save money, do you ever really save money?
I think for some organizations, maybe many organizations, cost is definitely something to consider, especially if you're working in an environment where you're already at razor thin margins on what you do
Sure.
as a business, retail, for example, those sorts of things.
Right.
But I think, again, it's one component. And there's no question, I've done this many times, you and I have done this model before, no question, if you were to take what you're doing with machines, hardware on premise, and
Mhm.
replicate that in the cloud with nothing else changed, many, many times it does cost more. It costs more over time. There's differences in how we look at the expenditure. Is it
Sure.
operating expense versus capital, et cetera? But I don't think there's any question that many times it is more costly, and I'm using that in quotes, to
Right.
go to the cloud.
Right. Because
And
just
let's be clear, public
public cloud.
cloud, and maybe even private cloud hosted. So
Right. Because, Gamal makes it interesting, says, what about the Rackspace private cloud? And we'll talk about that in a minute. Let's be cautious. And we're very careful here. This isn't a time to pitch Rackspace. We've got some great, smart people. Um, and we'll sell you something if you want to buy something. But what we want to do is talk about just give you guys some more knowledge to make your own best decisions and guide your own organizations. But which is why I
well,
don't want to pitch.
likewise, I'll say that it's not to pitch Microsoft. I mean, we're definitely a hyperscale public provider.
Right.
We're also very in tune with the hybrid market. We introduce technology all the time that enables the hybrid market, but we're about conceptually what does it look like regardless of who the provider is.
That's right. Okay, so now back to our topic. So when we talk about, just thinking that you're going to change a location of a data center, which if all you're doing is a lift and shift, not even a move and improve, just a lift and shift, then all you're doing is going from address X to address Y. Because if you haven't changed the way you're doing business, if you haven't changed the way you're operating your workloads, then nothing changes. The analogy I use is if you're going to move to a new house and you're going to take all your stuff and you look around and go, why doesn't it look any different? Because you just brought all your old stuff. You haven't changed anything other than the walls around your stuff.
Right. Well, and in fact, your furniture may not even fit in the new place. Your couch may not even
Right.
fit where you want it to go. And so now you've got an impedance mismatch, if you will, between what you brought with you and where you are. And I said this, in fact, I think I said this at a Solve event like 5 years ago. We talked about the fact that you have a lift and shift mentality. That's certainly a valid model for some people, but it isn't the end. It isn't the stopping point. You don't just like wipe your brow and go, whoa, thank God that's off my to-do list. Now what's next, right? We're in the cloud. Yeah, now what's next?
That's right. That's right. So what we're pointing at here, and if I tell you some of the other reasons that are bulleted in this article, and it's been producer Daniel posted it, but there was the cost savings. Applications required modernization to benefit from cloud native capabilities, which can be expensive and time consuming. Yes. But you know what, Kent? That's a decision and a discussion before you pack the boxes and move your house.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's why we have always talked about, and the industry has woken up over the last, 3 years to the fact that planning for cloud migration, planning for cloud usage is at least as important, if not more important than technology selection, the actual migration process. And organizations, I think, that tend to do the planning work and really get engaged in understanding what is that house going to look like, and what parts of my furniture do I need to take, what pieces of furniture do I need to buy new, etc. Those are the ones that I think they're going to see the most success.
That's right. And again, it goes back to how we started this and talking about it as an operating model, which means it's baked into the business. The move isn't hey, we're going from VMware version X to VMware version Y. And Philip even says it's why lift and shift doesn't work. It's because you bring all your baggage with you and all your problems with you. But that's a little too far reaching of a statement. If your view is only lift and shift,
correct,
and it is viewed as a solitary singular event, Philip's right. We're right. But a lift and shift works in the context of a move and improve. If it's the first step in a 100-mile hike, then it does actually work. I was talking to a customer earlier today, extraordinarily large financial services firm. And in about 5 weeks, they will have moved 100% of all of their assets from their data center into their cloud of choice. And they will be all the way there. Some of it was a transformation. Some of it was a lift and shift. Some of it was, it was all over the board. With an organization of this size and this age, it's all over the board. And they wanted to get some time with me because they wanted to know what's next. And it all comes down to the fact that, there are millions of reasons, but they realized the fact that it wasn't done, and they know that there's more to do. And it was just the first thing you got to get. And for them, and I think this really kind of should speak to, the people in this article that are abandoning the cloud, is they didn't look at the tangential opportunities. When you get into there, they moved a lot of old SAP things. They had, here's a product you may not have heard in a while, Kent, Documentum.
Oh my gosh.
They moved Documentum into the cloud.
It's kind of like those old actors. Are they still around?
Are they still around? Yes, they're doing talkies now.
Yeah.
And but the benefit that they realized in the context of the call was, granted, they lift and shifted those things in. But now that those data assets are in one common cloud, data is their friend. Now they can connect it to the world's leading data analysis tools to now actually get some amazing value that you would have never gotten. And that's what drives me nuts on articles like this or viewpoints like this, that, I was paying $1.50 per compute asset. Now I'm paying $1.75.
Well, there's two comments. Cool. There's two comments that went by in the comment section, and I can't see the first one. One is it's a question about data gravity, and we've talked about data gravity over and over and over again. And yes, that's a real thing, right? I've got a ton of data on premises. If I really want to go to the cloud and do things with that data, I have to move it or I have to copy it, whatever it is. But think about the company you just talked about that now moves 100% of their landscape and assets into the cloud. Think about what they're able to do now that the data coincidentally resides with the capability, machine learning, AI, et cetera. Right. The other comment that's important is Philip says here, seldom factors like time saved or a better experience are taken into consideration when factoring cost savings and ROI. And Philip, you hit it right on the head. I think it is a question of, am I simply looking at the cost of burning the light, right? Which is just a pure cost, or am I looking at the ROI of the investment that I've made? And if I'm doing that, in actuality, that's where the planning needs to occur. And Jeff, you made a comment, move and improve. I'm there. I'm now able to take advantages of features that I never could have done on premises.
That's right. So we made a lot of points along the way. The first is you got to have a plan that's more than can I lower the cost of compute unit. The second is, and it goes to what you were talking about with Philip's comment, and that is if you aren't exploiting what's there, And if you're just doing things the same old way that you've always done them, in other words, you move your stuff out there. If you're still running VMs, you still have to pay people to patch your VMs. Well, why are you running a VM on everything? Because
Remember
you
the
can
old
actually give your people some really meaningful work.
Yeah. Remember the old discussion that we used to have about pets versus cattle?
Oh yeah,
We've taken Bessie the cow and we've moved her into the public cloud. She's still Bessie. We still have to deal with her. We still have to milk her. We still have to feed her. We still have to put her out to pasture. We still have to do all of that. And she's the same Bessie. She's just in a different field versus, hey, we got a bunch of unnamed cows out here. We're going to do it. That cow's sick, then let's replace it with a different cow, that sort of thing. And that's an advantage that maybe you're not able to do on premises. Right. Although even that is becoming more capable on premises or even in hosted private cloud.
Well, that's right, because cloud is what, Kent? It's an
operating
model. All right, are you guys getting it into your head here?
Right. Percy has a go. So I was going to say the why you touched on cost, and I think cost is a huge one, right? And we'll come back to the idea of complexity and operational talent in a second on cost. The other three that I hear all the time are security, which frankly, we're still talking about security in the public cloud. And I got to be honest, this should be a non-issue given the massive amount of investment that all the providers are making. The third one is, and Percy touches on this, latency performance issues, right?
Yep.
Latency can slow an app down. And then the fourth one, and it's sometimes related to the data issue, is regulation. So GDPR sort of threw a wrench in us for a little while when nobody had data centers in Germany, for example. Yeah. But I think we're past most of those. Performance, still one that I think is actually legitimate. So.
Yep. It's legitimate. And Jason makes a really interesting point, and this is a real challenge. And it even speaks a little bit to one of these other bullet points. And he says, how do you optimize for the cloud while maintaining the ability to export or even say run the workloads? Because operating and moving and running it is I'm really dying to read what Philip said, but I can't do it and talk at the same time, though.
Right. I'm reading it in the background. That's why I'm laughing. So go ahead.
So, and that's a very real challenge, and it's one of that organizations need to think through. And that's why I like Move and Improve. I like Move and Improve because it gives me a manageable thing that I can do. I can take this workload, which I'm used to upgrading over the years, putting it on new hypervisors and new infrastructure. Cool. I can move it out to Azure, AWS, or Google. But once it's there, the next project is now, how do I start to pick it apart? And that's the beauty of the Move and Improve model. If you're going to transform while you go, there's a lot of unknowns in it, and it creates a lot of risk. It's good for some workloads, but not for all. Right. But once you're there, now you can choose to pick the pieces you want to pull out, like maybe identity, like maybe a PaaS-based database. Let's get rid of our single tenant SQL and use a SQL that's a multi-tenant version, or even break the database up itself and use multiple technologies.
Well, I'm going to read into a little more of Jason's comment too about exporting your workload, because from time immemorial, at least as long as the cloud's been around, there's always been this idea that we would get to the nirvana that we call cloud arbitrage, the ability for us to take a workload and put it in one place. And then all of a sudden it costs 20% less to run it over in this cloud. Well, just magically wave a wand, pick the workload up, move it over to this new one. And now we're saving 20%. And the reality is that doesn't happen. And it doesn't happen for a lot of reasons. Primarily, it's data gravity. Because we've finally gotten to a place, and this is going to sound like the buzzword tour, we've got containerization, we've got serverless, right? We've got the capability to build our applications, which is one part of the workload, in such a way that they are easily moved around. I mean, I've got a customer that I've worked with for years that is taking applications and moving them back and forth and actually running them in multiple places because they're containerized. And you and Taylor Bird talked about this yesterday, right? It is a great approach. So I think we can optimize. It's a longer discussion. Jason, thanks for bringing it up, because it is one of the questions we get a lot.
Well, and apparently we're not the smartest people in the world, because, as will be unnamed LinkedIn user, you should really log in LinkedIn, then we could use you for your name, calls it. And there's several things here, but his quote is, where do I best place the apps at the right place for the right outcome? Because that's what it's about. It's choosing those locations for the right outcome. Oh, apparently his name is Simon. Producer Daniel, yay!
But
Um,
here's the thing about that statement, and I think it's dead on. He's right.
yes,
Is that it's not a question of being able to move the same workload around to bunches of places. It
yeah,
is picking the workload that goes in the right place. So things that are going to go on the edge, right? Let's think about putting out AI capabilities or ML capabilities in a container at the edge. That might not be something you want to run in other places, certainly
yeah.
not in the near cloud or in the current cloud. But that's a great point, is that it's distributed. And that's where the multi-cloud thing starts to come into play, right?
That's right. And his point then is about outcomes. And if the only outcome that you're focused on is, can I lower my IT cost without actually paying it, or investing in any sort of transformation, you're going to fail. You'll fail 99.9% of the time.
That is the same logic, though, that drives people to make decisions around how they operate their building or how they pay their people, or,
Yeah.
how much do they invest in the chair that people sit in? You know what I'm saying? You get to a point where you are starting to worry about the dollars, and the pennies are flying out the
Yeah.
door,
Well, and you made
or the reverse.
Well, and the word you just used is the spot on word, and that is invest. Is it a cost center or is it an investment? Is technology an investment for your organization? And if it's not, I'm sad for you. Or is it an investment? Because at no time in history has it ever been the right time to invest. And I don't mean spend frivolously. I mean to spend in a targeted way, just like you would do with your own money, in a way to help your company grow because of the capabilities in the cloud. Because over the past year and a half, our companies have thrown all of their data in the cloud. So there is such an opportunity for the right investments to create returns that now your leadership comes knocking on your door and says, what if I doubled your investment ability? Would I get twice the output?
Well, there's a great graph in the latest Flexera State of the Cloud report,
Mhm.
right, for 2021. And the graph is titled Change from Planned Cloud Usage Due to COVID-19. And if you take a look at the respondents, right, you can see that there are quite a few companies that the investment is significantly higher than planned. Now, is that because they were forced into it, or because they're using the opportunity to actually do digital transformation? I'd argue it's probably a little of both. But
Right.
man, I mean, what a time. No other event up to this point has shown us what the value is of migrating.
That's right, and never. And let's be clear, nobody likes some COVID. It's got nothing but
No, no,
badness.
no, no,
But there
no.
is but there is a silver lining in the fact that it was a catalyst. And you use the term digital transformation, a tired old term that now I think actually has meaning and value. Thanks, producer
Right.
Daniel. And it has meaning and value. But I also like to use the term digital disruption, because we're not
Yeah.
just transforming, we are disrupting through digital technologies the way businesses operate.
Well, and here's the secret, though. There's a lot of organizations that don't like disruption.
That's
And
right.
there are a lot of people in those organizations that don't like disruption, right? The old book, Who Moved My Cheese, right?
Yeah,
They don't like their cheese to be moved,
that's
right?
right.
They want to know where it is. And so to those folks, I'd say, come to the party. The water's fine. Jump in. We're all here. We're still around. So,
That's right. And you can think of that. There's so many opportunities there. I think I gave an example the other day where, everybody thought that these mom and pop restaurants in COVID were going to close, and they went to delivering through Uber Eats and all of the delivery mechanisms. And I've heard examples just the other day of one that may never open again to in-person
right,
dining because they're making
right.
3 times the revenue they did before, and those people in the
Absolutely.
restaurants are just a distraction.
Our favorite Mexican restaurant here in San Antonio, I talked to one of the guys that runs it the other day. He said they actually, as a percentage basis, make more from their takeout now, and actually make more profit from their curbside and takeout than they ever did from inside the restaurant. So,
Mm.
and they were one of the first ones to jump on mobile apps and the web and being able to do this online ordering. Yep.
Okay, so there's a comment in there, and I don't understand the context. But somebody says he's still fired and blacklisted. I don't understand what that means. Um, I don't either. But I'm sorry about that. But it sounds like an opportunity to learn and dig back in. Racker. Yeah.
Oh,
Okay. Okay. Well, where are your cloud skills? I think there's opportunity to learn. I think there's opportunity for all of us, whether it's your organization or you individually, because it does create individual opportunity too, Kent, doesn't it?
It does.
You know,
It does.
you know,
I mean, you take a look at the job numbers now and sort of the open positions that are out there. It is an amazing time for people to be out looking. And it isn't just the people that already have the skill set. There are lots of organic growing companies that are realizing they've got to build
yeah.
their capabilities internally because they aren't going to be able to continue to bring them in from the outside. It's just not a sustainable model. And
Yeah.
I think that it's interesting you bring up. So I'm thinking I'm kind of watching the time in the background, even though that's your job as the host or Daniel, the producer. But
That's right.
I'm interested to jump to the takeaways, right? Because I have 4 that I think are super important around this topic. So.
Well, we are dropping to the bottom of the hour, and I think what we're talking about is if you're going to move to the cloud, have a plan.
Of course.
And I want to go back actually real quick we're going to release a podcast speaker from a Rackspace customer, Wyndham Hotels and Resorts, and we were talking about innovation just the other day, and what he was saying as they look at all of the business processes in their organization. And then I would challenge you also, if you're an individual looking to up your career, and they say, if we're still doing something today, it was probably done with the same process back in 1980, then it's ripe for innovation. And technology can be a part of that, but it's people and process and then technology. So,
Yep.
So that's
so the other thing I was going to add is you touched on it. Do your homework and figure out what's right for you. I mean, we've talked about articles and studies and all that kind of stuff. Lots of pundits and experts, and I would argue that, even a guy like me coming from Microsoft, we have sometimes a vested interest in the story that we tell. It doesn't mean that it's wrong. It just means it's vested.
right.
If you move back to on-premises, you want to make absolutely sure that you're still considering that cloud operating model.
Right.
And here's the last quote that I'll leave. This is Toby Weiss from HPE. Love this quote. The advantages of cloud, such as ease of use and fast deployment, don't necessarily translate to cost savings.
That's right.
Be careful that you know what you mean when you talk about cost.
That's right. I can think of no better way to go out. Everyone, thanks so much for being a part of this today. Always entertaining and always the best when I get to hang out with Kent. So, Kent, thanks for being a part today.
Oh, absolutely. Enjoyed it. Loved it. Great topic. We could talk about it for hours.
We could. We may, even after this is over.
Absolutely.
All right, everybody. Have a great rest of your day. And we'll be back next week because this is Thursday. So we're back on Tuesday. Watch for an alert as to when we'll be live.